Hello, everyone. Welcome to the People Strategy Forum podcast. We're a show that guides leaders on how to elevate their workforce overall. We believe that people are at the heart of successful organizations, and a team member's well-being, their rewards, and career development is all essential to a happy and healthy, highly productive workforce. And so this show discusses the practical and effective leadership strategies for executives, senior professionals, and talent managers overall. So we have a very special guest today, but first I want to introduce you to Howard Niswitz, who is a co-host on the show today. And so Howard is a seasoned compensation professional. I've had the pleasure of working with Howard for quite a long time now, and so I'm glad to have him here on the show today. Also, we have, of course, getting down to the meat of what we're going to be talking about. And today's episode at the People Strategy Forum, we're going to dive into the crucial topic of creating a skills-forward organization with Linda Ginac. And so Linda is a visionary founder and CEO of TalentGuard. And she's a trailblazer in the talent management software sector. And she has over 20 years of experience in career development and talent management overall. So Linda has masterfully steered her company to provide innovative solutions that are not only cultivate that culture, but ensure that people can navigate their career development, and it helps companies really retain and attract staff overall. So it's a very powerful tool. So let's stay tuned and explore how you can effectively integrate a skills-forward organization strategy in your culture. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I'm excited to be here with y'all.
So Linda, as we first start into this conversation, the first thing I'd just love to do is just learn a little bit more about you and introduce you to the community here that is listening in. So how did you get into this line of work, and what made you decide to develop your software?
Great. Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur in Austin, Texas, and have worked at various different startups in various different sectors, fintech, edtech, and at one of the companies that we were at the dot-com bust way back when, it was a company that had thousands of employees, and we had to make transitions over time. And I was helping these people in the company make effective transitions, helping them to figure out what they wanted to do with their life when the market was just a little bit crazy. And that inspired a whole love and passion for me around career development. And so instead of going to a new startup, I chose to start a career transition company, working one-on-one with individuals to teach them how to take control of their career and help them either figure out their journey within that organization, or if it was something that wasn't meeting their needs, how to step out and find something that would really ignite their passions. And then I codified that system to then train career counselors and career coaches on a process. So did that for about 15 years. And it was through that process that these HR people who were looking to add continuing education credit units for their SHRM program said, wow, this is actually really fun and interesting. We want you to do some consulting in-house, come set up some career centers for us to help our employees better navigate internally and help managers become better career coaches. And that eventually evolved with each customer engagement that I got from a consulting perspective to a software perspective. And so we've been working on the software for over a decade with many different customers across the globe. But the one thing that has always been consistent is I, as a professional, have always been skills and competency forward, and that is the architecture and premise of what TalentGuard is about today.
So before we dive into what TalentGuard can do and the skill-based and competencies and so forth, now can you just give us a glimpse of, I mean, over developing this software over 10 years, I imagine that there's been a lot of different trends and also software evolution, such as now we're dealing with AI. And so, can you tell us a little bit about that journey from the beginning until what you're facing now with AI?
Absolutely. So, our first go-to-market product was career pathing, built on a skills and competency foundation. And when we first started the software, I had the bright idea that I could just simply transfer doing that competency consulting work, working with the customers, putting their competencies in, building their job roles, then building out the progressions. And it was a bright idea, and it was a great idea. But what I realized as I sold more and more customers is that their data was really bad, and
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't ready at all. And I had to do a lot of work, or I had to get a lot of people to do a lot of work to help these organizations get their data in a format that would be in a state that would be operable, meaning you can do a skill assessment, you can build a career progression, because they have to be based on something. So that was kind of version 1.0. And then I thought has to be easier, because that just takes such a long time to get the customer from signing to launch. So I said, okay, we got to figure out how to wipe out 80% of the process. Then my second bright idea was going to IBM and trying to sell their talent frameworks. And I was one of the first resellers of that data. And then you had to figure out, well, how do you get that data that lives in spreadsheets? That's how it was sold, into a format that you can import it into the system, and then use that as a base to help clients then match their jobs to something that's already structured. And that was absolutely a lot faster, 80% faster. However, there was still a lot of work in helping organizations get their job titling system, because it was very bloated, and they'd have 90 ways to describe a marketing manager, and you're like, well, which one do we want to start with to do the mapping? Because we deal in job profiles. Usually there's one marketing manager, one senior marketing manager, unless the role is very different. And that was great. So now fast forward, I bought that data asset from IBM 5 years ago, and we have been building up that model over time, and that serves as one of our large language models for our generative AI, that we call Workforce GPT. That my goal was to take out 95% of the effort, where the human review would be less than 5 to 10% of the work that normally took 100% of the time. And we've been working on that for about 5 years, and it just keeps getting better and better, because now what happens is we can look at a company's job descriptions in any format, whether it's the website, a PDF, an Excel. We take in our data model that we keep up to date on a monthly basis. We look at labor market data, and that data could be through Lightcast and through LinkedIn and other sources globally, because we have a global customer base. And we use all that data to now build out a company's job architecture, meaning we update it. We don't build the job architecture. We take what's built, or we just take the job titles and we're passing it through the system, normalizing it. And now you have an entire skill matrix for the entire organization that has one skill, not duplicate skills, that goes across engineering, marketing, sales. We can look at clusters of skills. You have the way that we describe the roles are the exact same pattern across the organization. However, we leave the opportunity for variability in the way that a skill is defined. So communication might mean one thing in engineering and a different thing in marketing. And we have the ability at the behavioral indicator level to provide that differentiation, where you don't have to duplicate the skill. And that is it's a very complex process. And we do that with the AI to make it easier for our customers. So now when our customers go live, they're launching with their first 3 job families or so in less than 6 weeks. And they're telling us, well, we have actual test models now that we're running with universities that tell us how good the data is. And we're going to be publishing a paper on that. But the customers who are looking at the data are saying it's highly in context, and we couldn't have built it better ourselves. So we're getting closer and closer as we continue to evolve. And it's on version 3 of Workforce GPT. So we've done a lot to evolve just that one component of the data and the data management and updating the data, so that the software is even more effective.
So you mentioned that the new AI algorithms help save a significant amount of time. Could you give us kind of quantify that a bit? I mean, when we think about the amount of time it took to do this in a traditional format.
I'll give you an example that we're just coming out with a case study, and we had an organization that had 1,300 job roles. We got it down to 620. We built out the skills, 20 skills each, 10 common and 10 technical, with 4 levels of proficiency, 5 indicators each, 4 core responsibilities in the job description. Took us 72 hours to build out that architecture. And it took about 30 hours of review for each of the subject matter experts to look at all the jobs within their roles. And then we built out all of the career progressions, like every single progression across the whole organization in that 72 hours. And they estimated that, and they had done this 5 years earlier, so they hadn't updated their job specs in a while, that it was about a $750,000 savings in 1,800 hours of work.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
huge
that
savings.
was
A lot
big.
of big
That was
knowledge.
huge.
Does the system look for consistency so that if one manager is defining a level one way and another is defining it completely different, that the system will say something doesn't match up here?
Howard, we do. We have something called calibrate, and we use that term to mean when we're looking at jobs, let's say we're just looking at engineering, we look at the calibration of skills from the lowest grade level to the highest grade level, and we're setting those target levels for the skills within there. But what we're also doing is we train the model to say lower level job roles have more technical skills, higher level job roles have more leadership skills, and then there's interpersonal skills across the board. So it does that, but it also does it where now we want to compare engineering to QA, like software development to QA, and we're looking at it in that context as well. And we'll have people that say, well, communication might mean something different in branding than it does in engineering. Well, we're still going to have the same skill title, the same skill general description, but then when you're getting at those behavioral indicators or task statements, just say we've built 30 of them, only 15 go to marketing and the other 15 across those 4 levels goes to engineering, and we're still serving up a gap in that manner. And that's how we keep the integrity of the data while still allowing that differentiation across an organization in that calibration process.
That's a huge time saver.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that in and of itself is is a massive headache, to be honest, and we've reduced that significantly. Now, the customers sometimes will say, you know, we had somebody ask us to build them a supersonic weapons engineer role, and we're like, whoo, let's go build that one. And there's not a lot of labor market data on that role, and you need a lot of subject matter experts who built that role out to begin with. So sometimes there's 2 or 3 feedback loops that we have to work with the customer on to get the training of the model to be more accurate over time. And there is an investment in those upfront, especially those highly technical roles, to train the model to produce better results. And it just takes time to do that. But it still takes, I mean, you train the model and then every role that you build is getting more and more and more on target.
Right. So one thing that you mentioned, I just want to kind of double down on is you mentioned that one of the biggest problems that you have is when you go into a client and they don't have really good information in their systems, and maybe they don't have their jobs leveled effectively, and they don't have a structure around that, or very poor or non-existent job descriptions. And so when you go through, use the TalentGuard system and defining the skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities, and competencies, and so forth like that, and you're able to, I think Howard mentioned, you're able to ensure that those are consistent across the job families now. Are you able to provide that output that an organization can take that information and ensure that their job descriptions are even more robust and effective?
Yeah, you know, the one thing that I always say to customers when we're getting started is like, okay, we'll take your job descriptions, but remember your job descriptions are 5 years old, so they're dated, and we're going to use that as a reference point because there might be, and there are oftentimes very unique hard skills that belong to that specific organization, a skill that may not even exist in the labor market, and we want to take that in context to help, you know, make the machine learning model smarter. But also what we're saying is the labor market has the best data. So you take the labor market data, you can take their data in context, and you're going to build out that role that is really accurate. And usually the first time we're sitting with HR, we're saying, here's your job description, here's just general labor market data, and here's what we built for you. Look, here's all the skills that were listed here. Here's all the skills that are here. And these are the 20 that we put together for you with a 95% confidence rate that this is going to hit the mark. However, you may want to change it, and they can change it. They can say, well, you know what? We just don't want that skill, or we only want 5 common, or only 5 leadership, and we want 20 technical. So you have to go through those rounds with the customer. And then sometimes they'll say, because we have ways to fine tune the model, they'll say, can you make the responsibilities a little more robust? And can you make the skills a little less robust? Because we have a limitation in one of our talent management systems that you can't have more than 1,400 characters, and we're passing data over, right? So there's that learning curve. You know, you want to build it with 3, 4, or 5 proficiencies. Do you have a character limit? Do you want it to be heavier on technical, or do you want a good distribution? And once you go through usually that first onboarding experience, usually with one job family, the whole HR team and that first subject matter expert team, they get familiar with the new methodology and the new process, and they help train that second group that comes on board. And then by the time you have 2 job families done, they're running with the rest of it. And then they're going 3 and 4 job families are being launched at a time, because what happens is you're building up trust in the data over time. At first, everybody trusts nothing. They're like, there's no way that this is going to be good. So you lead them through the trust process, and then they're like, wow, actually, that wasn't so bad. Then they give you the feedback, you generate them again. Then they're like, wow, that's actually really good. Let us have legal look at it. Let us have the subject matter look at it. And then they're coming back with not a lot of changes. And they go, all right, you know, that next group is less. And then by the third group, even though we say you have to do a human review, you want to be accountable for it, it becomes less and less. And then we are in a maintenance mode. We're going to flag, hey, there's a new skill. Do you want to add it? Yes or no? Or this skill is no longer relevant for a role. Do you want to take it out of the job? Yes or no? And if you take it out of the job, it doesn't mean you take it away from the employee. It just means it's not part of your job. It's not mandatory for you to have that skill at that level now, but we absolutely want you to have it as part of your data bank.
Right.
Right? Because I need to be able to search on that skill later. Now people are saying, Linda, can we put all our old employees in there? Because we want to be able to search on our alumni of skills. And you're like, oh gosh, okay. So once they get those rich profiles, you know, it's a data mine. It really is. It's a wealth of information that they can use to make decisions about the future of work, about certain talent gaps that they have as their organization continues to grow.
Yeah, and I want to dive into each one of those pieces, you know, the talent profile, understanding talent gaps and so forth. But before we get there, let's define the you know, what it means to be a skill forward organization. How do you interpret that?
The way that we describe that is organizations that want to make decisions based on data, hard data. And I'm using skill as a broad term. I guess I could use competency as a broad term as well, but it's skills, competencies, experiences, qualifications, certifications, work style preferences. They want to establish a common language across the organization, and they want to be able to eliminate some of the subjectivity that typically happens in the workforce when we're thinking about upskilling and promotions and talent pools and performance, and build it on a foundation of skills, of a tapestry that everybody can look at the data and say, we have a definition around what it is. We can all look at the same thing and make decisions based on that, rather than us all interpreting what something might mean. And they're going to put the effort in to all talent management practices, not just what TalentGuard does, to be able to have an analytics dashboard that gives them the data that they need to run their business. That is being skills forward.
Okay.
And it takes time to get there. It doesn't happen overnight.
Sure. And of course, this is the foundation to create career architecture, career paths, and really help people navigate people through their careers and retain them long term.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that is the foundation. And oftentimes we start with companies in our automate, which is there's no employee facing experience at all. They might add that on later, but they're coming to us to automate the process of building out and structuring their job architecture. Now, maybe they've worked with a consultant or a firm to build that job architecture, which is, you know, your leveling and your career bands and your job title catalog. And then we're taking that data, and we like that data. It's very, very clean. And then we're building out the entire architecture of the career models. Or they'll say, we did that initially, it got bloated. Can we use you to clean that up? And we can still do that cleanup work. Now, what we're not going to do is say, should you have more grade levels or should you have less grade levels? We let the experts do that. We'll say, based on your grade levels, based on your titles, these are all the job roles, the job descriptions, and all of the skills and the proficiency levels. And we map the learning, provide the coaching tips, the interview guides. We build all that stuff out.
And does it facilitate, you know, assessing the proficiency of individuals against
that
those?
would be the first employee experience. So now when you get the data ready, that first employee experience is enabling the employee to take that talent assessment and assess 2 configurations. We can assess skills. To me, it's like a skill tag. It still does nothing more than let me tag skills, which I don't think really drives data decisions. Almost 100%, actually 100% of our customers, even though they think they want to start that way because it's simple, they go, oh, no, we want to look at those proficiency levels because we really want to know if an employee is at a basic level or an advanced level. And we're looking at those observable behaviors that say we've achieved it or not. And that data then drives every experience within TalentGuard, whether we're recommending career paths, recommending an upskilling campaign, recommending performance improvement, corrective action, leadership development. It's one skill across every single app. It's not building in a separate assessment over here that's not linked to a skill. It truly is the foundation.
A lot to think about there.
Yeah, it's a big concept. So skills forward, you got to start somewhere. And my recommendation always, Sam and Howard, is to build out the matrix first, and then figure out how to put that matrix to work in your first application, whether it's a talent assessment or performance or 360. Oftentimes, TalentGuard is sending that data back to other HR systems to make sure that that data stays in sync because we do this so rapidly.
So I guess the next question I have is just the industry differences that there are, and also understanding the different reasons why certain companies bring this infrastructure into play. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of industry variation. When we think about, I'll just maybe take 3 industry verticals as examples. Let's take the first one being energy. And we can even talk about natural gas or natural energy. There are industries that are highly regulated, airline being another one, and they have very specific rules and guidelines and compliance around upskilling and around career progression. There are these things called like observable, I think they call them observable qualifications, OCs, and these are basically proficiency levels that have certain learning and tasks that are assigned to them that have to be observed by a manager, maybe a training expert, and some higher level person. And people have to knock off this list before they can move up to the next level. So TalentGuard supports that process because we're able to document at the skill card level each of the observations that are being made. And we're talking about the ability to install a seat in 90 minutes, 60 minutes, 40 minutes, 30 minutes. That's at high compliance, highly regulated. On a flip side, you might have an industry, IT services, where you have these organizations that augment staff, technical staff in nature, for organizations. Their mission, right, is to make sure that they have the best talent, that talent is leveling up in their skills and certifications, because when they level up, they get to bill more to their clients because they're putting a higher caliber of talent first, and they have to prove they have the best talent because normally they're putting 25, 50, hundreds of people on staff at a time. So these can be huge tenders that they win. And we have to make sure that on a quarterly basis that they're leveling up, they're checking in, we're producing resumes in bulk so that these organizations can compete. So it's not regulated, but if they want to drive more revenue and drive more clients, it's business critical, mission critical, business critical. And then you have more career development forward, where organizations want to lead with the career pathing and the talent marketplace because they're driving retention and turnover and engagement, they may not be so skills forward first, and they only realize later, oh, skills matter for these experiences to happen. But they're doing it more for the employee experience. When they launch that way, then they realize the data that they have and what they can do with it, and then they start to think about ways that they can be more skills forward. And then they'll think about, well, maybe we should go back and do some of this updating of job architecture first. So in those three examples, even though the outcome is the same, getting data to drive business performance and efficiency, the way with which they're getting there has a different use case.
Right. Now, I know that a lot of industries are facing pressures from the supply chain that is causing them to rethink about how they educate their people, and also nearshoring and upskilling and reshoring, so that people understand how to do the job in the United States or wherever they're located. And so that's creating a lot of demand for these systems. But one thing I want to dig into is your concept of the talent profile or the talent marketplace. Can you tell our listeners what that's all about?
So when you think about the talent, there's two things that I actually heard when you said there, Sam. One is, how do you better optimize the learning path to make the learning experience shorter, that people can become more productive quicker? I think that's something that is interesting to explore it as well, because that is a foundation of upskilling and career development. Really, that's what it is. And if we kind of look at that first and then how that leads into the talent marketplace, I think this will make a nice story. So we love LMS systems. You know, there are a lot of them out there. And the challenge, though, with the learning management system is sometimes often employees have to be proactive, going to the LMS, searching a keyword, and finding a catalog of 30, 40, 50, 60 items that they think will fill a gap that they're not quite sure themselves that they had, but someone said, hey, you have a communication gap and you need to stop doing X, or you need to start doing Y. And we're like, well, what does that really mean? So I have to guess at it a little bit, or I'm searching on Google, or I'm searching on Amazon Books, just to try to find the ways that I can improve my skill and my performance. What TalentGuard does to add benefit to that optimized learning path is we don't just map learning to the skill, right? So if you're mapping learning to a skill, that skill's applied across all grade levels. I'm going to serve up the same learning to just say a data entry person as I would the CEO, because there's no way to tell what the gap is. It's just, you know, you didn't do so well on communications, you need to go find something. When you're mapping it at the proficiency level and then at each of the indicators, you're able to, one, serve up nano learning or micro learning, right? Instead of serving up a 3 or a 4 or 60-hour course, we can serve up 90-second, 2-minute, 3-minute courses that close the gap based on your role, based on your proficiency level, and based on your gap. So you optimize the learning path. So you can save not only hundreds of thousands of hours in an organization per employee, but you better optimize the learning of the LMS, because you're going to be directing to things that, you know, they say 80 or 90% of learning in an LMS is never used. Well, we can optimize more learning in that experience based on, you know, that personalization and that targeting. So people are getting trained faster and better and more targeted. And that helps now serve up in that career development experience, whether you're building out a career path or you're really looking at the marketplace as an opportunity where vacancies are being generated, gigs are being created, projects are being created. In either case, you as an employer are looking for ways to adapt your skills to some future role or some future opportunity. And in either case, that match percent, when you're leveling up and you're closing gaps faster, means you're ready for those opportunities as they arise faster than you would be if you were developing yourself on your own. And those recommendations are coming at you. Every time you level up on a skill, you're going to match to items in the marketplace or items in your career path faster.
Right.
Now, whether you get those opportunities or not is a different story, because in our system, we don't market just opportunities. We expose every single job role. We want you to be able to see everything that company can offer, match you to everything that you possibly can. And when an opportunity arises, we will expose it as a vacancy in the opportunity marketplace.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
So how does this lay into the talent marketplace?
Because when you're ready and you're creating an opportunity on a job profile, we will say, hey, an opportunity just became available for the brand manager, 19 opportunities. You're a 98% match fit. It's part of your favorited role. It's part of your career path. It's part of your aspirational plan. You are there. Do you want to put yourself in the hat? Apply now. And then now you're in that vacancy loop of all candidates that are qualified externally and internally to be considered for that role. And oh, by the way, because I have all the things that you've done as an HR person or as a manager, I'm able to see how you've leveled up to become proficient for that role. So I have a wealth of information on you and all the feedback on you, because I'm looking at you for that role because it's part of my talent pool. And guess what's happening? Now, we can now use that to have your promotion rate, which may have been 10%, is now 50 and 60 and 70 because you have the data to make those decisions. Whereas those employees, if they're not right in your immediate grasp, and with remote work, we don't get to see people's work output. Now you're getting recommendations of people who fit that role that you would never meet in your organization at any time because your organization is so big. So we level that playing field and use the data to drive those recommendations.
Have you found organizations realizing the sense that they're able to have greater promotional opportunities versus going to the external market because of using those capabilities?
Oh, absolutely. Our whole value, one of our value props with that career pathing tool is to increase your transition rate to 50% from where it is right now. And we track that. So we track every single move that's made. We update your timeline with your transition, and then we mark that as a check. But we're also looking at, if they allow us to, the DE&I analytics that go along with it. Who was promoted and how does that help drive a more inclusive workplace?
Nice.
That's great.
Because people are like, wow, I didn't even know that Sally over here was a VP of marketing before. And because she was, overqualified for the role, we brought her in, and I only know her for what she's doing right now, which may be, a senior manager of analytics, right? So now I have her resume, I have all of her skills, and she's now being recommended to me as a quality candidate. And I'm like, wow, I've never met Sally before. Where has she been my whole life? Let me reach out and engage in a conversation with her about this great opportunity that I have in the company that meets her needs and mine, right? Because we're bringing the employees' aspirations from the bottom up. We've got the organizations from the top down, and we meet right in the middle of where does fit happen and what does fit look like? Because fit is skills, it's experiences, it's, those attributes, but it's also your aspirational plan. And then you got to think about performance in that mix. Are they performing in the role now to be able to be a candidate for an opportunity for a promotion or a lateral move?
Yes. And so of course, TalentGuard brings a lot of things to play. First, it shows what each job's requirements are as far as knowledge, skills, abilities, competencies, and so forth. And then it also shows the talent marketplace, or the talent pool that you have internally to match to that. And that in turn, of course, lets you understand if there's any particular skill gap in the organization that needs to be addressed.
That's right.
So, how do you see your clients work with that skill gap? You mentioned LMS systems and so forth, but I imagine that's made quite a bit of an impact on their organization, making sure that they're ready.
Well, I think a great example is your supply chain example. As organizations move from more traditional physical supply chains, they're embedding robotics and automation, they're figuring out how to embed AI. A significant part of that workforce needs to be upskilled or reskilled. So let's say that I have a talent pool of a certain type of materials manager, or somebody who's working the shop floor, and we need to migrate them from that current role to some future role. Well, the future role has the future skills, the current role has the current skills. We put all those employees in that talent pool, and for each employee in that talent pool who's being matched against that criteria, they have a percent match fit. They have a development plan that they have to work on that's unique to them. But there's also similarities in that talent pool that you can now begin developing talent in a cohort for a particular business need and business outcome versus individually across the organization. And now you have that insight at that group level of what needs to be done to be ready for change to happen. Then you're planning for the change, but then you also see the gap between what you have internally and where you may need to recruit externally and make those choices. As an example, that's one example.
So now that a company has they've gone through the process of creating a skills forward organization. They have all their jobs mapped. They have the levels and the appropriate functions and career paths, and the next step is of course getting traction in employees and managers using the system so that they can managers can coach people forward. So what are the common hurdles that you see, and how do you solve those?
Well, everybody's busy, right? We can all acknowledge that. We already have too much to do wearing, me, myself, and I hats. But the thing is, when you think about it from an employee perspective, there's one thing that we always hear in every discovery call with prospects, and it's that our employee engagement scores or employee satisfaction scores are suffering. And the number one thing that employees are asking for is opportunity management, career development opportunities, the ability to upskill and to feel heard and cared about, and to be able to do that in a way that works for me, meaning it has to be self-serve. So when organizations launch this for employees, it's a much wanted initiative. And so employees are getting in there and they're engaging with it, and they're having a good time, and they're building those opportunities, and they're learning. Managers are also wanting that, right? Because they're also an employee and a manager. And so they're looking at it to upskill themselves, but also they have to do it in a way, if a manager has 7 to 10 people on average, that's a lot of work. So one of the things we really try to do is think about what operational processes these organizations already have in place. A lot of organizations already have either a monthly check-in or a quarterly check-in, and we build those career development discussions, or the change management processes. Let's tack on to that. Let's add a new layering of discussions. Let's provide some coaching tips and feedback to the manager on how they can engage that employee in that discussion. And then that comes from my career coaching days. How do you coach a manager to be an effective coach to an employee? Yeah. How can we begin to have those conversations that are meaningful to the employee and the manager? But what's more important is, let's say the average manager has, like you say, 10 people and they have 20 skills each. That's a lot of skills to assess. So how do you reduce seat time? We reduce seat time by setting the assessment out of the gate to the target level. So a brand manager needs communication at an intermediate level. It's already set to that level. So the employee doesn't really have to assess. They can begin in that career engagement journey immediately. Same for the manager. But maybe out of the 20 skills, there's only 3 that I think I'm below target or above target. I'm assessing those few, sending those few into my manager, and we're having a very targeted conversation about upskilling. Right. So instead of assessment paralysis of I got to do another assessment and it's going to go sit in a shelf, it's dynamic, it's up to date. We're purging the skills, we're adding new skills. That whole notification workflow process is managed. And I think that goes a long way in helping employees and managers to have visibility on a single page of what's important to me, what's important to you, manager, and how do we come together to make change happen over time. But also HR people are really busy. So you have to give them toolkits and best practices and guides out of the box that they can tweak, because they are the HR team, they're the marketing team, and they're the analytics team, and they're sometimes the support team. So we don't have any HR people do support in our system. We do it right down to the end user, because we don't want them to have those roles. So you got to give HR ways to get live fast. That's not a burden. To adopt the software through marketing, to support the software with good knowledge base, good AI questions, and then enough data to help them drive analytics when they're being asked the right questions. So their hat is just bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And if you can't touch all of those pillars, it's not going to be a successful deployment. And we've made our mistakes. And each time you do it, you have to learn about what becomes more important as you continue to grow and scale as a company.
Sure, sure. Now, one thing you just brought up again, I would like to revisit this is the artificial intelligence that your system has. Can you elaborate on the different areas where AI really makes a difference in your software?
Absolutely. The majority of our AI through our TalentGuard labs is on the job and skill entities themselves and not on people. We don't want to touch the people recommender yet because there's just so many rules and regulations right now that we're not comfortable with. We want to see how that shakes out. So everything that we do is we build skills, we build a job profile, we build the progressions, and we update that. We do the calibration, and then we will do that with lots of different rules. So it could be different types of proficiency levels, or we might build the job in context of the need. Then we build the OKRs. And from the OKRs, we build the skills. So we're doing a lot with the intersection of skills, jobs, and OKRs in the industry context, in the company's context, to get that data set as good as we possibly can.
Nice. Yeah, because the world keeps changing, right? Nothing is
Oh my
static.
gosh. Well, and the AI models keep changing. So
Yeah.
you're having to constantly update it, fine tune it, learn it, see what's different, run QA on it, make sure that there's no creep, the model creep, make sure it's producing good results. So, and then the human loop, we have human people that have to review every single job that we do that stays part of our standard framework to make sure that it hits industry standards, rules and regulations. It's not biased at all. And it's a constant upkeep, and it always will be.
Yeah, and specifically, I was talking about just jobs themselves might change. I mean, the new technologies, new programming languages, new just keeping up to date on that. I mean, if you're an HR professional, that without a system, that could be a full-time job.
Oh, it is a full-time job. They say that it takes, and we did surveys with our own customers, and then we looked at all the market labor that's out there with SHRM and all those other organizations. On average, to build a skill-based job profile that has 20 skills, 4 proficiency levels, 5 statements each, from start to review is between 4 and 5 hours to get it right. Well, we get it down to less than 20 minutes in the system ready for use.
Yeah.
And the majority of that is that 15 minutes of review by a human.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Multiply that by your job roles and then the upkeep that's needed for that over time. It's a lot of time.
No kidding. So the next thing is of course I know a lot of your clients are interested in integrating this with a variety of different systems that they're using in HR. Which systems are they interested in integrating?
Oh, almost always. There's the HRIS that's running the employee of record system. That's always first because they want to send the data into TalentGuard. They want to keep that in sync. They don't want to have to manage data in 2 systems. So that's the first point of integration. The second point of integration is almost always the LMS. So how do we map the learning from, and they don't have one LMS, they have 3 or 4 different learning systems, and then they change those systems all the time. So there's this constant mapping, and our learning mapper does that as well. So you map the learning so that you can engage in that upskilling experience really fast. And then the third thing would be the applicant tracking system. So once we're creating requisitions, similar to the HRIS mapping, how many job recs are open for this profile? So that when those opportunities present themselves and it's part of my career path or favorited, we're able to alert that user that, hey, now there's a real opportunity for you to go apply, and then that application process is being managed in the right way. Those are almost always the 3 systems that TalentGuard integrates within that first year.
What about performance management? Is that
So great question. So we have performance management in TalentGuard. Sometimes customers are using that. If not, what will happen is if they're using our Succession, we will import their performance score data to help drive the data on the grid. but very rarely, well, actually, do we push to, we don't push a lot of data into the performance management, but we do push the job description into the ATS. And then we also will push that job description back over to success factors or to Workday, because we're getting very granular with the data. And actually, I mean, even with Cornerstone, they have certain limitations of character limits, or we don't support proficiencies, or we don't support this, but we'll push out, or they'll get as much data as they can on that role, which tends to be deeper than what they already have.
Well, great. I imagine a lot of our listeners right now are thinking about, geez, how do I see this system or so forth? How can they learn more, Linda?
Oh, wonderful. They can go to the website and request a discovery call, request a demo. I think what we should also do is maybe do a demo between us, and then we can share it with the audience. I think that would be good too. We always love to do show and tell. That's when it really comes to life. And those questions get very interesting, and you can really nail in and drill in on each of the use cases, like some that we've discussed here today at TalentGuard.com.
Yeah, I look forward to that. We'll have another session where we'll dive into the system and do a demo, and we'll share that with our listeners. Perfect.
That would be cool.
Well, thanks, Linda. I mean, it was a pleasure having you on.
I appreciate you having me back, and I look forward for you all to see the software as well. I don't know if we've shown it, or it's been a while if it hasn't. So
yes, I know it continually evolves. So we definitely need to check in on a regular basis to keep up with what all that TalentGuard is doing.
Thank you, and thanks to the listeners. We appreciate you.
All right.
Take care.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Rewards Mastermind, and we will see you soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye.